the idea of a superintendency, it's not about the work, it's about the responsibility for the work. And that's something that is very stressful. When you carry the weight of the decisions you make, the decisions that other people make, the actions of other people, you carry all that on you. I'm held accountable for the actions of our staff, our teachers, our directors, our assist everybody. Ultimately, if things go well, we celebrate together. If things go poorly, that falls on me.
You're listening to School District Superheroes, a podcast that puts the super back in superintendents. In each episode, you'll learn how today's most innovative superintendents are reimagining what's possible for students, staff, and their communities. And now for your host, Nick Telford.
Well, welcome to our School District Superheroes, Paul, the podcast highlighting the super in superintendent. Thanks for being part of this.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Great. So today I am joined by the wonderful Paul Marietti, Superintendent of Lancaster School District. And I've known Paul for quite a while. One of the most genuine and innovative folks that I've had the pleasure of getting to know over the years. And looking forward to this conversation today. So welcome, Paul. To kick things off, who was your favorite superhero growing up?
Growing up, I used to read a lot of Marvel comics. And so I would have to say my first favorite superhero was Captain America. And I read a lot of that, and I read a lot of Spider-Man. But yeah, I read comic books as a kid. So absolutely.
Okay. What resonated most with you about Captain America? Was there any particular qualities he had that resonated?
I like the backstory. Him being a World War II soldier, and I was very interested in history. I ended up becoming a history teacher, so that piece of history, that World War II history, and his backstory, and and a little guy turning into a superhero. I was a pretty tiny guy back then. I'm not tiny anymore, but I was a pretty tiny little guy back then.
Could you maybe talk us through your background? Maybe just talk us through your early days and anything in particular that maybe shaped your path to a life in education.
Absolutely. I come from a pretty blue collar family. My father was a plumber. And so I grew up kind of around the trades and around the unions. And my brothers are all plumbers. So there's 5 boys in my family. Really, growing up, there was kind of you grew up and you went into the trades and you took the family business. But I had a mother who wanted something different for me, and she really wanted me to get an education. And so she really put those ideas and those beliefs in my head that I could go to college and I could get a degree, and that was something that I ended up pursuing. And I was the first in my family to get a college degree. Having brothers who are plumbers, are very capable. They didn't really understand why I needed it. I went to college 4 years and I came out and I really didn't know how to do anything, right? I couldn't fix a car or change out plumbing or do anything. But so they kind of made fun of me for it for a while. But I really found my home. I wasn't the best student in the world. I struggled academically. I had some attention deficit growing up, but I just stuck to it and worked hard and pursued a degree and pursued a career in teaching.
You mentioned your mother instilling a sense of confidence in you that you could go and go to college. You're the first one in your family, as you mentioned. Is there anything, there must have been something, she would have presumed treated all your siblings the same. Was there anything that you think was different about how a message that you took from her, or anything else, that a reason that you were the one to choose that college path?
My mother was a fighter. My mother really did believe in servant leadership. I saw my mother through her faith in the Catholic Church. She taught catechism classes. She's a lectern at Mass. She was a teacher herself in her own way through the church. She was a paraeducator, a special education paraeducator. So she really was a role model for me growing up in every aspect of her life, whether it was her faith or whether it was her family or whether it was working in the community.
And you mentioned you weren't the best student, and your words now, not mine. But I hear that a lot from people who've gone on to to be very successful in their lives is that, in elementary school, they weren't top of the class or achieving the grades that maybe they would have wanted to, or their parents wanted for them. What is it that you think, if there's some, young students listening to this podcast, what are the traits that you think are foundational to maybe long-term success? Because they couldn't all be just academic, right? So could you maybe just give us your insights on what skills you did think you learned during your early days in school and that maybe have stayed with you to this day?
So, I'll tell you, my story I always tell is that when you come across educators, they tend to have been good students. So when you talk to teachers, they'll say, well, I love school. I was a good student. I loved school. I enjoyed it. And I decided to pursue a career in it. You don't too often find someone who says, I really hated school. And because I really hated school, I went into education. That doesn't happen very often. In my case, I did struggle in school. And I was, like I said, I had a little attention deficit, a little hyperactivity, and I was out of my seat a lot, and I was always moving around. And I couldn't sit still, and I got in trouble a lot. And so that was a struggle for me early on. And it wasn't until later, as I got older and I calmed down a little bit, and then I had certain people in my life who were role models, teachers that I looked up to, that actually, said I could, like my mother said I could do, would be something more. And so that's when I had the idea of maybe I could, pursue a degree. And my degree was in history. And so there's really not a lot you can do with a history degree. Education obviously is one of the openings there. So I thought, well, maybe I could be a teacher. And so that's what I pursued.
Yeah. So that love for history, I think, you find one thing that you are really good at, you're drawn to it. And I think that's sometimes the catalyst for opening up other doors in terms of, what will continue through that path in education. So when you're taking quickly moving forward in terms of being a superintendent, your first superintendency position, when you took on that role, was it what you expected? Could you maybe tell us a little bit about the journey
Sure.
and the lessons you learned there?
So, I worked my way up through education. I sat in all the chairs, the various chairs, and, I decided, well, maybe I can do that. Maybe I can become a superintendent. And I remember my superintendent at the time, Angelica Ramsey, telling me, well, Paul, if you pursue this and they offer you a job, you have to take it. You can't really say no. And I said, well, I'm just going to put my feelers out there, and, I'm going to go to a couple interviews. And I went up to a Fowler, which is up near Fresno, and had a great conversation with the board and got offered a position. And really didn't hit me till after they offered it to me, and I said yes, that I had to call my wife and say, yeah, I just got a job in Fresno. And all that entails, because I was living in Ventura County at the time. So it kind of hit me, wow, this is for real. It was my first interview. And the challenges of going to a small district. Small districts, I think, in a lot of ways are far more difficult than larger districts, in that there's a brighter spotlight on you. And there's a lot of people around you who have been in that district, in that community for a very long time. They're very influential people. And you really have to pay a lot of attention to kind of the politics, what's going on in the community. And, anytime you're new to an organization, there's a learning curve. And, and Fowler was going through some significant changes at the time. And it didn't help that COVID hit in that first year that I became superintendent. So it was very difficult. My old boss, Roger Rice, used to call it yeoman's work. It's yeoman's work. It's backbreaking, hard labor, but it's very worthwhile. It's very rewarding.
Were there, you said it was, you learned hard lessons there. What were the hardest lessons what were the lessons that you have taken to your role in Lancaster, a bigger district, But what did you learn there that you're like, okay, that's something that I will need to pay close attention to in my next role, whenever that was? Can you remember any of those particular lessons?
I think as you come up through administration, there's a lot of lessons to be learned coming out of the classroom. I think when you're in a classroom, you have a union, you have control of your space, you have control of the work you're doing. I think when you move up to administration, you go into an area where you have a lot less control. And the one thing I learned coming up through assistant principal and principal was that there are times where they're going to be difficult. There are going to be people that don't agree. There's going to be situations that are hard, and you become a focal point at times for the responses to those situations. Those responses aren't always accepted by other people, and you begin to feel as though you can't please everyone. And then you feel as though maybe there's a bullseye on your back where people can kind of take shots at you and come at you. And that's part of the job. And I always tell people, if you can't live with that, if you can't live with people being upset with you or disagreeing with you or saying things about you that maybe seeing you in not so great a light, if you can't handle those things, then you probably shouldn't be in administration, because that's a piece of it. It's a wonderful job. There are some great parts of it because you can really serve people and do wonderful things for kids and communities and schools. But there's always a part of it that you are responsible, and decisions are tough. And when you make those tough decisions, you're not going to please everybody. And so, as you go through the principalship, which I think is the most important chair to sit in as an administrator, if you've run a comprehensive school of any type, as a principal, you can pretty much do anything, in my book. I was lucky enough to be a high school principal. The greatest job in the world is being a high school principal. It's like being the captain of the ship or the mayor of a small town. The sports, the music, the academics, it's so much fun, but it's so hard and so difficult. There's so much going on, and you kind of have to have your head on a swivel, right? You have to have eyes in the back of your head and the sides of your head and things that are going on. I'm making decisions all day long, but it trains you up really well. And then it's just about going from chair to chair and learning the different aspects. I was lucky enough to move into student services and learn all about student services. And I was lucky enough to move into HR and learn all about HR. So then it's just a matter of accumulating that knowledge so that when you become a superintendent, I don't have the answers, but I have the experience. So if I make a decision, it's based on all those experiences I've had over my 34 years in education that I draw upon to make those decisions, which makes the job a lot easier than if you didn't have those experiences.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I think it's some really good advice to any of the aspiring superintendents out there to learn your trade across the different disciplines within administration, to understand those hard lessons, the decision making at roles like a high school principal. I can see that Friday Night Lights. You wouldn't want to be anywhere else, but there's probably a lot of other things that come with that. I was interested in one thing you mentioned, where almost the higher you go in the administration to a superintendent, that you mentioned the less control you have, which is maybe a little bit of an oxymoron in terms of, you think that, you're a superintendent, you've got full power, right, over everything. So, but I also understand maybe where you're going with that in terms of like, there is a lesson obviously you've learned that maybe that's not the case. I just want to tease that out a little bit more with you as a super.
Sure.
The kind of control or lack thereof in that role.
Yeah. So managing 30 students, 6 periods a day, that's not a lot of people, but managing 14,000 students, 2,000 employees, and then working within the larger community, that is, you cannot do that by yourself. I don't manage the district. We have a whole teams of people with highly skilled people who are exceptional at what they do in their specific areas. And as a superintendent, I have to trust them to be great. I have to trust them to be creative, innovative, mindful, service-oriented. Though I cannot micromanage that. What I do, is I try to find the best people people that are far better than me, far smarter than me, and put them in positions for greatness, put them in positions where they can excel and achieve. And then what I do is I make sure they have everything they need to do their work. And so, but ultimately, you know, I'm the face of the district, so it's my responsibility. If they fail, I fail. If they succeed, we succeed. And so, I think the idea of a superintendency, it's not about the work, it's about the responsibility for the work. And that's something that is very stressful when you carry the weight of all those decisions that other people make. When you carry the weight of the decisions you make, the decisions that other people make, the actions of other people, you carry all that on you, and you are held accountable. I'm held accountable for the actions of our staff, our teachers, our directors, our assist, everybody. Ultimately, if things go well, we celebrate together. If things go poorly, that falls on me. And I think that's the difficulty of the job. That's the hard part of the job.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Paul. I think you mentioned it's about the responsibility for the work as opposed to the work itself. I think that's a really good way to sum up the superintendency role. In terms of leadership itself, what do you see bold leadership being in education today? Maybe it's different in the last 20 years, but today, what is bold leadership to you?
So, my idea is, I'm a builder, and I want to surround myself with builders. I really feel people fall into two camps. There's builders and there's maintainers, right? If you're a maintainer, you want to keep everything the way it is and just keep it functioning. But for me, I'd rather come into work every day, and I want the people around me to come into work every day and think about how we can do it better, where we can grow, where we can improve, where we can make changes that will, affect change and affect children, affect our schools. So I want to surround myself with people that are innovative. And I think, today we are facing some really challenging things in education in regards to social media and artificial intelligence. And, up and down the state of California, we've seen students' behavior really struggling with their behaviors, how they treat each other, how they treat adults. And we need to be bold in coming up with new ideas and new ways of addressing the needs of our students to ensure that they're meeting their educational goals. I think employees have changed. It used to be people worked for school districts for 30 years. You'd go to the cafeteria at the local school, and the head of the cafeteria had been there for 25, 30 years. That's just not how it works. And our turnover, especially in our classified staff, it's constant turnover. So how do you address the challenges of training people, constantly training people because they're new to the job every 2 or 3 years? Those are huge challenges that we face. So,
and how do you build trust then? Because I'm presuming with the team you have, you're with, especially when you talk about turnover and all the challenges that are facing you every day, to bring people along with your vision for the district. How do you build that trust with your team?
So, it's the same thing as when, like I said, if you've run a school, if you've run a comprehensive school, you pretty much can do the job.
Yeah.
One of the things I always said was, people have to know where you stand as a leader. People have to know your vision. But people have to know your beliefs. People have to understand where you want to go. And the only way they're going to know that is if you tell them. And so you've got to be pretty consistent about your messaging of who you are, what you stand for, what you believe in, where you want to go. And you have to build that communication with them and build that trust with them. People, if I walk down a corridor at my high school, people would say, "Oh no, here he comes. He's going to talk about PLCs again," or "Here he comes. He's going to talk about the science of reading again," or whatever it is, because they know where I stand. They might not agree with me, but they sure do know where I stand on things, and they know where we're going. They know where they know the bus is going down the road, and they can either get on it with me, or they can get run over, because this is where we're going. And so whether it's at a comprehensive school or whether it's at the district office, people have to know where my heart is, what I believe, where I believe we should go. And it's up to me to set that tone as a leader. It's up to me to set the vision. It's up to me to be clear about the expectations. People do it in different ways. I have my friend Tom McCoy, who's a superintendent. He's a person of few words, but when he speaks, people listen because he has something to say. I'm a person of many, many words, so I'm a little more demonstrative, a little more loud. There's different styles to leadership, right? You could be somebody who's a cheerleader and screaming at the top of their lungs, or somebody who's very stoic and wise and says few words. Both of those systems work, but the point is that the message gets across, right? We get that message across, and if we're not conveying that message, then who is?
Yes. But it sounds like in the clarity of the message is important, but also the consistency of it. Is that from what you were
Absolutely.
saying that, you said walking down the corridor, people know what you're going to say to them. They hear the same message over and over again, but they also, there's trust and comfort in that, in like, I know it's expected of me within this district. I know where we're going as a district. I know the strategy for success as a district. And I think that does build a lot of trust. And it sounds like your style. It's like you set the vision, you own it, you're responsible for it. It's clear to everybody, and you keep consistent with it. And that seems like a recipe for success to me.
That's the way I've learned how to do it. That's what's worked for me. Like I said, over the past 34 years. So I'm sticking to it now. It's too late to change.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Switching to the students, I'm just curious from what you've seen. You're 34 years in education. Modern day, what do you see the important skills that students need going out into the world post their high school education?
Yeah, when I started teaching, I started teaching in 1994, and I received a grade book, an attendance book, and was shown my classroom. It was a chalkboard. There were no computers, and the world we teach in today is very, very different than that, right? And I think the students today, I think the thing that worries me the most, or the thing that I see in our students today, is really being able to sift through the information and understand that whatever they're looking at or whatever they're reading may not necessarily be the truth, right? It's a version of, it may be a version of the truth, it may not be the truth. Their ability to determine facts and think for themselves and get other sides of things and get other opinions of things and construct their knowledge base. That worries me because we have so much disinformation that's out there now. And it worries me that, information is at their fingertips. I know I have two daughters, a daughter in college and a daughter who just came out of the university system. And, it's so easy to use the tools we have now to not have to really think for yourself. Really, it's about finding information and putting information together instead of creating and building. And so that worries me a lot about our students today. So, right now our big challenge is with artificial intelligence and how we as adults use artificial intelligence. How do we as administrators use artificial intelligence? What are our guidelines for how we use those tools, and making sure that people understand what our guidelines are for us, and then what are the guidelines for our teachers and how they use it, and then what the guidelines are for our students and how it's acceptable or not acceptable in our classrooms. So that's work we're doing now. And that's the work I think you refer to as something that really concerns me about, education in the modern world.
So disinformation, I just wrote that down there as something that is a real challenge for. It wasn't around when I was growing up in school. It wasn't around when you were growing up. What are you doing within the district? You mentioned there's multiple AI initiatives or initiatives related to AI that are taking place, or in Guardrails you're building. frameworks, etc. What are you doing in particular to help equip students to deal with disinformation and to use technology and AI in a way that is in the right way?
Yeah. So kids are using it. They're not asking for permission, right? They're
Yeah.
just using it. And the only thing that really that students, in my opinion, my view, that are really holding them back or giving them any sense of concern is, am I going to get caught cheating, or is this cheating? Right. That's where their line is. But we are doing a disservice if we're not talking about AI, if we're not communicating with the students about, this is a tool, this is in my classroom, in this assignment, this is how you can utilize those tools in a way that is appropriate, versus not talking about it at all.
Sure.
Or versus just say you can't use it. They're going to use it. So it's about establishing parameters around the use of it, and then showing the students proper ways that it can be leveraged and used. But that goes for adults too, right? So we put things out. If I put out something, so this is a conversation we would have. I put out a community letter and I run it through AI to clean it up. Maybe I say, take this letter I've written to the community and make it more friendly, or make it more, official, or tweak, do the grammar and the thing. The letter goes out. The question is, should that be noted? Should a notation be said that this was developed through the use of AI? And really, what we've come to as leaders in our district is, yes, we when we're going to run something through AI and we're going to put that out, we should note that. That should be noted, so people know that we're using that tool. And so we need to create parameters for ourselves, like kind of our rules of the game for ourselves as administrators, as teachers, how teachers use it, because there's wonderful tools for teachers that I wish I had these tools when I was teaching. Wonderful tools for creating rubrics, creating lessons, and but they need to also have rules of how they use it, and then of course it's passed down to the students. So this is the work we're doing with our AI task force here in Lancaster. And I know there's lots of districts that are ahead of us in really adopting a large language model platform, because anything you put into these AI platforms, that's information that you've just given away. So really getting a closed system where we can keep our kids safe in their use, and really getting them to understand the best way to use the tool.
No, it's great. Thanks, Paul. Certainly it's a trait of yours that you run to problems and away from them, or not problems, but challenges. And I think AI is a challenge. And what I hear you say is it's going to happen. So open up the conversation around it, not just with the adults, but with the students, and talk through how to be responsible with it. And that really is the most healthy approach, regardless of the actual initiatives taking place. The approach is really key, which is let's figure this out together. It's new. We're at the very, very early stages of it, and so much is going to change over the next 10 years. So yeah, thanks for talking us through it all. I want to focus more on Lancaster School District now, and laser in on any particular initiatives that you're most proud of within Lancaster School District across a broad range of topics. Is there anything particular that stands out to you that's current, or even in the last couple of years, that you're most proud of?
So one of the things we're really proud of is we passed Measure LS, a bond measure, a couple of years ago, and really putting those funds to work in reinventing some of our schools. Or some of our schools are 60, 70 years old and really in need of a lot of work. So just updating our classrooms, modernizing our schools, bringing some buildings back to life. So really, really excited about the construction piece that's going on here. We're going to open up a new early learning center next month over at our elementary school, Sunnydale, which is great. I think on the academic side, we've seen academic growth this past year with our test scores, with our CAS test scores. We contribute a lot of that to our commitment to the science of reading. and our phonics programs that we've instituted, and making sure all kids learn to read by the third grade. We put a lot of emphasis on that program, and we think that's really been paying off over the past 5 years academically. We've got wonderful staff here, wonderful teachers working really hard. We have a challenging community in Lancaster, and I always tell people the challenges you find in your community, you're going to find those on your campuses. Those challenges don't just vanish when children walk through the school gates. So we have over 1,000 homeless students. We have about 400 foster students in our schools. Those are huge challenges, and we have done an amazing, tremendous job through our community schools grant to be able to provide our families and our students with all the needs they have, whether it's food, clothing, gas cards, housing vouchers, backpacks, coats. It's just food. It just goes on and on and on. All the support we provided, which we're really proud of. And then, we have the ELOP grant, so we've been expanding out our after-school programs, and really proud of the work we've done in providing our after-school programs for our students. So a lot of good stuff going on in Lancaster.
Yeah.
A lot of good stuff. A lot of things we're really proud of here.
Yeah, no, I remember being really struck, through conversations with you especially during COVID, realizing that the school district was the go-to place and the hub for the community in not just education, which is maybe the way it used to be, but in healthcare, in after-school care, in nutrition. The list goes seemed to go on. Like, it literally, you came back to you never did anything, and it was, well, the school district will take care of that for you if you live in that.
So a great example of that is we were having students come to us who were struggling to get their vaccinations, and they were saying, well, our appointment's in 3 months, so we're not going to be able to go to school for 3 months. And we just said, that's just completely unacceptable. So we went ahead and we created our own vaccination clinics here at Lancaster School District. So a student that comes to register for school, come in the office, they go down the hallway, they go to our vaccination clinic, they get their vaccinations, and they're ready to go to school. So they go in smiling, but they come out crying, but they're ready to go to school because they got all their vaccinations. So really excited. But that's a good example of what we do, right? We see a problem. We're limited up here in the Elevo Valley for our families to get access to the healthcare they need. So you know what? We're going to become a healthcare hub, and that's just what we're going to do. We're going to try to remove all those barriers for our students and our families.
Well, yeah, I've always been struck by the commitment of the folks within the school district. The conversations I've had with various folks, and how it isn't just a job for them working within Lancaster School District. They see it as far more than that, and a testament to the culture you created within the district and with the community, and position the district as a place where you can come for really any need that you have. Yeah, there's someone there to care for you as a parent or as a student at any level, and it's really admirable. And I've walked those campuses with you. I've seen the new buildings that you've built out. It's beautiful to see the new playgrounds, the new classrooms for the kinders. So yeah, it's a great place. These kind of podcasts are great platforms to be able just to highlight the fantastic work that's being done across the state. And kudos to you. You deserve to be celebrated whenever anyone gets the chance to do that. So
it's all the people. It's 2,000 employees all pulling in the same direction. So
yeah. 100%. You and the whole team. Kind of one of the last questions I have for you, Paul, is when your tenure is over, whatever that may be, what do you hope your district says about your leadership?
And that's getting close because I don't have much more time left. But really, anywhere I've ever been, I want to leave. I want to leave it better than I found it. Right. So if I can make an impact, make an improvement, leave things better than I found them, then I'll be happy with that. And hopefully, I can't solve all the problems. It's hard because when you leave, you there are issues that you probably haven't tackled yet, haven't got to, or have been working on but haven't solved. Those will still be there for the next person. But that's okay. You do the best you can. You make the best improvements and changes you can. Hopefully you make the right decisions and good decisions and put the right people in the right positions, and you leave it better than you found it. And that's the best I can do.
Yeah.
So that's my hope.
I think that's very true to the kind of person I found you to be over the years, Paul, is straight as an arrow, genuine, true to your word, and I'm very clear with the direction you're going. And so thank you for your leadership that you're providing to your school district, to the whole community in Lancaster. And so thank you for being part of this conversation today. To everyone else listening, behind every successful school system is a superintendent making hard decisions, building strong teams, and fighting for students every day. They are the real superheroes shaping the future of education. If you found this conversation helpful, please tell a friend, follow the show on your favorite podcast platform, and leave a review. We'll read it out in the next episode. I'm Nick Telford, and this has been another episode of School District Superheroes. Thank you very much, Paul.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it.
Behind every successful school system is a superintendent making hard decisions, building strong teams, and putting students first every single day. These are the real superheroes shaping the future of education. Follow the show on your favorite podcast platform. And if you know someone who would be a great guest, email us at podcast@elevolearning.com. I'm Nick Telford, and this has been another episode of School District Superheroes.